Mishpatim. I'd like to go to the end of the parasha, chapter 24, verse 1, because we always get so caught up with the beautiful halachos, all the psukim about the halachos, that we forget that we never get to the end. So I'm going to start from the end, chapter 24, verse 1, which is just an incredible scene. Val Moshe Amar, and got to Moshe, God said, Aleo Hashem, go up to God.
Just Google, so I have to share with them. According to Google, knows the answer. That is, you can't. American Indians do not worship totem poles. They are used as a way to commemorate ancestors, important events, and family lineage, serving as a representation of history.
So I don't know if you heard that, Jerry, but Jeff said that according to Google, they don't actually worship the totem pole. It's just like a memento to remind them of their ancestors.
The tribes up in,
But I don't know that Google is always correct, because
the tribes in British Columbia, and this is based on going to the anthropology museum.
yeah,
They depict certain animals, and the animals, like the orca, and bears and stuff, are representative of spirits, but they don't necessarily worship it. It reminds them of stories, but there are one or two depictions that it might be, it's a question of they could have thought it was a god at one time.
right. So you have to, with all these things,
Right.
you have to do your research and then go to somebody who knows this information. You can't just go to a rabbi who doesn't know anything about totem poles and ask him, is a totem pole permitted? Because most of the times you need to know the facts, otherwise you can't decide the question. So
Take the form of animals at time to talk to people.
yeah,
It's coming up in Daf Yomi, that the Chachamim needed to learn all the Kishuf and the Avodah Zarah in order to know which is and which isn't.
yeah, well, it's in the Gemara. So you need to know, you're allowed to learn in order to give halachic ruling. But so you have to know, but we don't, but I don't know. So, but let's move on. But thank you.
Don't chance it.
Val Moshe Amar. So to Moshe he said, go up to God, Atav Aaron, you and Aaron, and Nadav and Avihu, you and Aaron and Nadav and Avihu and the 70 elders, and bow down from far away. So what is this? We just did, last week, we did the 10 Commandments. After the 10 Commandments, we had the story of building an altar. And then we have all of Mishpatim, all these laws, Ela Mishpatim, all the different laws, civil laws. And now we come to the conclusion of it, and we say, oh, hey, how you doing there? And we come to the conclusion of it, and all of a sudden we're talking about going up to the mountain. What is this talking about? So Rashi tells us something for chapter 24, verse 1. Rashi tells us something very powerful, because you have to understand why Rashi is saying this. Rashi says, Parshazu Nemra Kodem Aseres Adibros. This whole paragraph here was said prior to the 10 Commandments. Even though it appears here written at the end of Mishpatim, it was said prior to the 10 Commandments. Ba'arba b'Sivan Nemer lo alei. On the 4th of Sivan, God told him to go up. So if that's the case, why was it written here? Why was it written at the end if it was told here? You understand the question? If it was said earlier, why is it written here at this point? Yes, Jerry had a question.
Yes, if God wrote the whole 5 books of Moses, why would God create this problem of not
Right.
the narrative in chronological sequence?
Right. So that's the question that I was asking. No, yeah, get a chumash now. And the point is that you have to see why the context made it necessary to do it like this, and there'll be different explanations. First, let's read the paragraph itself, and then we'll come back and see why Rashi. Well, there's 2 questions. Why does Rashi think it was like this, based upon the Gemara in Shabbos 88a? And also, why did God want to do it this way? So those are 2 questions. We'll come back to it after we read the whole paragraph. So what happened? V'nigash Moshe levato el Hashem. Even though Moshe said to God, you and Aaron go up with Nadav and Avihu, and they'll bow down, you shall bow down from a distance, but Moshe himself went up.
Mishpatim.
And Yigash Moshe Levado El Hashem. Moshe himself went up to God. Rashi says into the fog. Mehem lo yigashu, but the others did not come close. Va'am lo ya'alu imo. The people did not go up. Vayavo Moshe vayisaper la'am es kol divrei Hashem. And Moshe came and told the people all the words of God, v'et kol mishpatim, and all the laws. Vayan kol ha'am kol echad vayomru kol asher diber Hashem naaseh. And the people answered and they said, whatever God says to us, we will do. Whatever God says to us, we will do. So Rashi tells us on that same day. So what day is Moshe speaking to them? On the 4th of Sivan. What day did Moshe get the 10 Commandments? On the 6th of Sivan. And so what mitzvah is he telling them on this day, on the 4th of Sivan? Rashi says he's telling them about 2 mitzvahs. The mitzvah of Prisha, the mitzvah that man and women had to separate from each other, and the mitzvah of Hagbalah, that the mitzvah of that you can't come too close to the mountain. So before they actually got the 10 Commandments, they had 2 other commandments right there, which were the mitzvahs of separating from one's spouse to prepare for Sinai, and also the mitzvah of setting a boundary. And then it says, Meskol Mishpatim, and he told them all of the laws. Which laws is he telling them? The Sheva mitzvot shenestavu b'nei Noach. These are the 7 Noahide laws, and then the 3 commandments that we just learned this in the Daf Yomi. The 3 commandments that they learned at Mara. What are they? They're Shabbos, Kibbud Avaim, and Rashi says here Para Aduma. But in the Gemara it says. The Gemara, it doesn't say Paraduma. It says Shabbos, Kibbud Avaim, and Dinin Shenetnu Lahem B'Mara. These were the laws at Mara. So this Rashi includes both. Actually, 4 laws at Mara, but in the Gemara it only says 3. It leaves out the red heifer. And now it says in verse 4, Vayechtov Moshe es kol divrei Hashem. Moshe wrote all the words of God. What words is he writing here? Moshe wrote all the words of God. Vayashkem boker, and he woke up in the morning. And he built an altar underneath the mountain. And he built 12 pillars. All of a sudden, we're getting a lot of action here, which it did not say before the 10 Commandments. It says that Moshe wrote the whole Torah. What's he writing? At this point, what's Moshe writing? And then it says he built 12 pillars. So what's he writing here? Rashi tells us, Mi Bereshis and Matan Torah. He wrote the entire Torah from the beginning of Genesis up until the giving of the 10 Commandments. Where exactly did he stop? It doesn't say exactly the point where he stopped.
You understand the beginning of the 10 Commandments? I wrote on Friday.
Until.
Right, so but sometimes ad bichlal, so I wrote that it's until chapter 20, verse 15.
Well, it's not clear. The Rashi is not clear. Rashi is ambiguous where he wrote until. It could be that you're right, but it could also be that he's wrote up only until, because it's only the 4th day. So he didn't get the 10 Commandments yet. So how could he write it? So it's more logical, in my opinion, to say he wrote until the 10 Commandments, until the passage where, in real time. And then he wrote the commandments that were commanded at Mara. But what do you mean? Where did he write that? Those were not written down yet in the Torah. So that's already ambiguous. But Rashi's saying here that there's a version of the Torah that was written and it was incomplete. This is a big chiddush that he's writing just a portion of the Torah. And that the Torah was written piecemeal. Not that it was all given at Sinai. So if this is correct, then this portion of the Torah was not given at Sinai. That from Genesis until Sinai was not given at Sinai. God didn't tell Moshe those words at Sinai. It was given beforehand.
That makes sense.
It makes sense logically, but it goes against certain theological statements that Maimonides makes, say that Jew has to believe that every single letter of the Torah was given by God to Moses at Sinai. And according to this, it was given prior to Sinai. So Moshe woke up early in the morning, Rashi says, on the 5th day of Sivan. Okay, Vayishlach, so now we get a big problem here. Vayishlach as na'arei b'nei Yisrael. And he sent the youth of the children of Israel, Vayalu olot, vayizbechu zvachim shlomim la'Hashem parim. He sent the children, the youth of Israel, and they brought offerings, and they made sacrifices, peace offerings to God, and cows. Rashi says, who did this? Rashi says, these Na'arim are the firstborn. Because the Kohanim were not yet chosen. So Rashi says the ones doing this are the firstborn. Vayikach Moshe, Chatzi Adam, Moshe takes half of the blood from these animals, Vayosem Ba'aganot, and he places them in basins. V'Chatzi Adam Zarak al Mizbeach. So Moshe has an altar, and he's doing like a service, as though it's like a ritual. And when we were at Sinai, we saw that they said this is the place where he did it, that they showed us an altar. There is an altar there. There is an altar there. So if that's Sinai, there's an altar there to this day. And he took half the blood and he sprinkled it on the altar, and the other half he put in a basin. Rashi says he put it in two divisions. Who came and divided it? Oh, Reb David is here. Reb David, we're studying in memory of Reb David's mother. Today is the yortzeit of David's mother. And so we're studying in her memory. Her name is Sarah Bas Chaim V'Belos Lota, and all the Torah study we study this week is studied in her memory. Did you want to add anything, Reb David? Okay, maybe later in the week, David will add when he's ready. But it's a big honor for us, David, and the Neshama should have an aliyah. So it says he put it into two basins. So who divided it? An angel came and divided the blood. Why do you need an angel to divide the blood? Okay. So and he put it into two basins. One was for the oil offering, one was for the shlomim. And then what's he going to do with the blood? He's going to use it to sprinkle them on the people. A very important Rashi here. This is how we know what's necessary for conversion. Mikan lamdu rabosenu. From here, our rabbis learned shenichnasu avosenu abris, that our ancestors entered into the covenant. They converted before Sinai. How so? B'milo tefillah v'azas damim. They circumcised themselves in Egypt. And they immersed in the mikvah here. Well, how do we know they circumcised in Egypt? That's the Gemara in Krisos. How do we know they immersed? They must have immersed. And they sprinkled the blood. And you could only sprinkle the blood with immersion first. So that's what you need in order to convert. And it never says that they went through the chief rabbi's office or the bureaucracy. Never says that. This is what they did. And now...
all the other things about...
Oh, I'm sorry?
All the things about turning away 3 times comes later too, right? It's the book of Ruth.
All the
Turning somebody away 3 times.
so turning somebody away 3 times is that's just because you want to make sure they know what they're getting into. So the source for that is possibly in Ruth, but the problem is that there are other sources that say you're supposed to evangelize. So I suspect that it became amplified when it became incredibly dangerous to convert people. It became incredibly dangerous in Jewish history to convert people because the people who converted, they could knock out the whole town in 1 second if you're in a precarious state. Yes, Jerry.
The text specifically says that Moses should sprinkle it on the altar. There is no indication that the sprinkling of blood is to be sprinkled on the people.
Yes, my dear friend, it says it in verse 8. We're just not up to it yet. You have to be patient, and we'll get there, Jerry.
Well, if in verse 8 it's a sprinkle on the people, then it's in contrast with the second pasuk that says sprinkle it on the altar.
He took half was for the altar, and the other half was for the people. We'll get to verse 8, you'll see.
Okay.
So it says, Wow, it's like a beautiful wind outside, beautiful wind. It says, Vayikach Sefer HaBris. So Moshe, this is, by the way, is the most, like, what's the word? When you have, what's the word to describe when you have a vision of heaven?
Oh, prophecy.
Well, that's a vision of the earth. That's very good. It's a prophecy, but I'm talking about like a vision of the, like,
Revelation.
Mystical.
yeah, but
Revelation.
Out of body experience.
like the chariots of Ezekiel, like so like you have this maybe it's theophany, like you have this vision of what the divine entity looks like. This is the only text in the Chumash. Yeah, we just read one on Shabbos of the Haftorah of Isaiah's prophecy. We have Ezekiel's prophecy. We have some visions like that. But in the Chumash, this whole scene where we're about to describe the throne of God, it's unique. This is the only case like this where we describe the throne of God. In fact, the other sources say you can't see God, but here it says we're about to describe it. So it says, right? So Moshe takes the book of the covenant, the Sefer HaBrit, by Yikra B'Azneim, and he reads it in the ears of the people. And they said, whatever God said, Kosher Diber Hashem Na'aseh V'Nishma. Whatever God said, we will do and we will hear. Rashi says, what is this book of the covenant? What's he reading to them? What book? Where did he get this book? Did he take it from the library? You got it from Sapphire? What's this book that Moshe is reading here? Where did he get it? Rashi says the text of the Torah. Not everybody says this position. A lot of scholars argue. Maybe he had another text out there, because it doesn't seem like it's the same thing he read before. Because earlier it says Moshe wrote all the words of Hashem, and now he's saying it's the Sefer HaBrit. So the simple reading will be that these are two different texts. But Rashi is saying that they're the same. It's the exact same, which he wrote before. Well, if that's the case, he suddenly gave it a name, and it didn't mention that. Very difficult. Moshe takes the blood. He takes the blood, and he sprinkles it on the people. And he says, he made dam abris. This is the blood of the covenant. This is the blood of the covenant that God established with you on all of these matters. Look at Rashi, vayizrok. This means sprinkling. Okay. And he sprinkled it on the altar. Why? To atone for the people. What was their sin? What was their sin? That they needed atonement. We'll see, maybe. Now we get it. Vayal Moshe ve'Aaron v'Nadav and Avihu v'Shivim miziknei Yisrael. And Moses and Aaron and Nadav and Avihu and the 70 elders went up. Now we have this very, very difficult verse to understand. Vayeru es Elokei Yisrael. They saw the God of Israel. The Tachas Raglav, and underneath God's legs was Kamase Livnat HaSaphir, was under his feet was like sapphire bricks.
Stone.
What?
Like a stone.
Yeah, well, a brick is not exactly a stone.
No,
but
it says in it.
Oh, it says they're stones?
A square blue stone.
A sapphire is a stone. But they said, right, so what does it look like here? It's a sapphire brick. What's a sapphire brick? What is a sapphire brick?
Very expensive, precious
I
stone.
never heard of an actual sapphire brick. I mean, I heard of a gold brick, but I never heard of a sapphire brick. And uke'etzem hashemayim with Torah, and was like the appearance of the heaven in its purity. So what is going on here? We're going to have to first see what Rashi says. Vayeru es Elokei Yisrael. This is what happened, according to Rashi is going to say here, this is why they died. Nadav and Avihu died. They looked and nistaku ve'tzitzu. They looked at God. They looked and cast a glance. V'nischayva misa. For that they were given death. But God did not want to take away from the joy of the Torah. And so therefore he waited to kill Nadav and Avihu until the dedication of the Mishkan, which is a little bit difficult also. Well, if you don't want to kill them when it's too joyous, then why kill them on the day of the Mishkan?
So then,
So listen, did the 70 elders also?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and Rashi's about to mention what happened to the elders. Rashi's about to mention, yeah, Benji, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, so they didn't, the death punishment wasn't because they went to Mishkan drunk.
According to this, very good, Benji, very, very good. According to this, it argues with that approach. It was not because they went to the Mishkan drunk, but it was because they looked at God. But you will see that they were drunk when they were looking at God, because it's going to say that they ate and they drank in the next verse. And so that could be a reference that they viewed God after getting drunk. So you're correct, Benji. Very good point. Benji, very proud of you. Very proud of you, Benji. Let's give it up for Benji. Skoya. So what happened to the elders? And for the elders, they were like, the elders were taken out later on in Bamidbar. They were also taken out. That the amongst the officers in the camp, that is the elders. So the elders went down when the people complained, and then the quail came, and then the fire burnt them up. So both of the Nadav and Avihu and the elders were taken out because of the sin of looking at God. This is a very, very difficult passage to understand. What was their sin? They were trying to look too far, look too closely. We have a little bit of this, you're not supposed to look at the Kohen when he gives the bracha. That's why all the Kohen's hands are supposed to be completely covered, because we don't want to look too closely. But the idea is you're not supposed to look too closely at God. At Sinai, at the revelation at Sinai, we're being told don't look too closely. What's the danger of looking too closely?
Rabbi Seth exactly added that question.
Oh, Seth?
Yeah.
Oh, so no, there's no indication that Nadav and Avihu were ever warned. Seth's asking, were they warned? There's no indication that they were ever warned. And
So maybe that's exactly like going back to what you said before about boundaries. Moshe maybe thought that by saying, I am going to see God, but you will not, you will be there with me, but weren't supposed to see God. They didn't understand that little hint, and so that's why they were punished. But
that's a very
like
good
just-
theory. It's a very interesting theory that maybe that the boundaries was their warning.
Indiana Jones knew this, think of it.
I mean, or Steven Spielberg put it into the movie there. That's true. Yes.
What's the word? What is the translation of the word by Yakazu?
Ve'echazu means to look. So, yeah. So it says, you mean in the Rashi?
Yes, because it's an unusual word for look.
Ve'echazu means to look. Wait, where is it
Vision.
exactly?
Hazon Yeshayahu.
Right, that's what I was wondering. It's similar to.
Yeah, but here it means to look. It says, where's the words?
It's in, towards the end of this.
Oh, Ve'echazu et Elokim. And they looked, and they viewed God. And they looked at God. So, yes, I'm sorry.
He disobeyed.
But it never said to them, as Seth was saying, it never said don't do it. They just they were too aggressive in the, only Moses was supposed to go up. But it never said don't look. It never says don't look. But clearly they disobeyed. Clearly they disobeyed.
When they ate it.
And also, well, let me just say one more thing. This could also answer Seth's question. Yeah, hello, Michael. Hello. It says the feet of God were like the sapphire bricks. Rashi says, "Pi lefana v'shas hashibud, liskor tzaratan shel Yisrael shayim shubadim b'ma'aseh levanim." Why are these bricks there in front of God? This was what was in front of God during the time of the enslavement. God made his throne, the feet of his throne, under his feet, he made sapphire bricks to remind himself that the Bnei Israel were enslaved and making bricks.
Wow.
So And Uke'etem hashamayim l'toar. And once they were redeemed, there was light and gladness before him. Now, this passage is so opaque to my mind. It's like such a mystery. What is going on here? And hold on. Well, it says the Torah says, in 3 parashos it says that Moshe can't look at God. I don't think it said it yet. Maybe I'm missing it, but it says in parashas Kisisa ki lo yirani adam v'chai, that you can't look at me and live. So anyway, there's a lot to go on here. That's why I wanted to jump to the end of it, and we'll study it this week.
He didn't extend his hands. Emotional, yeah,
Oh, that's tomorrow. We didn't get up to it yet, but that means that God did not strike them down at that moment, even though they were worthy of death. That's what Rashi says. There's obviously a lot of different explanations because this is such an opaque passage. People are going to go in many different directions with it, and it is the most mystical passage of the Torah. To my mind, the most mystical passage. All right, let us daven to Hashem and imagine there's a brick, sapphire bricks at God's feet. And Reb David is going to lead us because he has the yahrzeit for his mother